Welcome. I have with us here today 5 people who have volunteered to share their own stories and their own experiences of having a parent who's incarcerated. We have Susie Jensen, Quanitra McCrae, Trevor Johnson, Frankie Herrera, and Chauncey Warren. I'm Megan Stanton. Let's just start off by setting a little bit of context. So if every panelist would take a moment to speak about who in their lives was incarcerated, for how long, what was your level of contact before, during, and after incarceration. You could start with Susie.
My name's Susie. My mom was first incarcerated when I was 12 years old. She was incarcerated for about a year and a half, and then in a halfway house for about 6 months. And then she was incarcerated again when I was 18, and she is currently incarcerated excuse me, at York Correctional Institution for a nonviolent second-degree larceny charge. I think my relationship with her before, my parents have been divorced since I was 6, but we still had regular contact with my mom days during the week and every other weekend. I was very close with her. So the first time was extremely hard, and the second time was very disappointing, and she's missed a lot of big events in my life.
My name is Quanitra McCrae, and my mother has been in and out of incarceration since I was 4 years old, back in 1994. And she's been in and out ever since 94, and she's currently incarcerated in York for a domestic violence dispute. And my relationship, before she got incarcerated when I was 4, really wasn't a relationship because she wasn't taking care of me. And now that I'm older and I get a chance to see her on and off, we're starting to bond back and forth with each other, but I still don't have a relationship with her.
My name is Trevor. Interestingly enough, I'm sitting next to Connecticut, and she's an intern in one of my probation offices, and it's kind of unique that we're sitting here together learning a little bit about each other. My father was in and out of the system for much of his life and most of my life. Went to prison when I was 4 years old, got out when I was 7. We had a little bit of a relationship. My parents weren't together, but it was a challenge over the years to try to keep a relationship. At a point where I decided to have a relationship with my father when I was old enough, when I was in high school, he went to prison for manslaughter. And that made it extremely difficult to connect because I was trying to understand what was going on with him, that he would do something like that. And after that, when he got out of prison, actually we actually got to know each other while he was in prison, which if you heard from the kids in the video, it's the audio, it's a pretty interesting experience to go into a prison to see someone you love, and they're brought down in prison garb and doors are closed, and you're sitting there, you've waited for God knows how long, and then you maybe spend 15 or 20 minutes with them, and then the hugs goodbye are always strange. But it's sort of a work in progress. It's probably what motivates me to do the work that I do, and just want to say that I feel honored to sit up here with these folks because their experience is far more real and more close to that of children of incarcerated parents. But again, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Frank Herrera. My father was in and out of the system for the majority of my life. Was just recently released from prison, thankfully. I had a great relationship with him coming up, besides, him being incarcerated and violence and things of that nature. And I'm looking forward to mending my relationship with him now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chauncey, and my father, thank you. My father was in and out of the system most of my life as well. Started at about the age of 6, and he was back and forth. And my interaction with him, more or less my relationship with him, changed drastically due to the environment in which he was in. And visiting him was no picnic. The monitoring, the no touching, and the contact was strained. Therefore, the relationship weakened, and not only myself, but my brother and my sister had to endure that. So it was an experience.
Well, thank you all so much for coming and being with us. Still working out some of the kinks. I think mine has to be closer too, but not that close. So we just heard some of the voices of children who have experienced having a parent who's incarcerated, and these were very fresh experiences. Some of the children in that audio were as young as 5. Sitting up here today with us, did anything in that audio specifically resonate with you? Anything that you could identify with? I know Trevor mentioned that some of that resonated with him. Anything specifically?
When she talks about the very last piece, when she's like, she's leaving, and she just says, "I misses you," and it's hard. I know I go up to visit my mom with my daughter, who's 7, and as we're leaving, she's looking through the windows, trying to, blow. She calls my mom her meme kisses, and just that last little bit of attention that she can get from her before she's not going to see her, because, it's almost an hour drive from our house, so we try and go up once a month, but it's hard with school and work and everything. So just that sense that you have to leave someone and miss them for that month, that resonated with me.
Anybody else in the emotional experiences of the children?
As for me, I'm sorry, I'm too close. Visiting my father and seeing him institutionalized, it made me feel as if I were institutionalized, because there was this procedure I had to go through with seeing him, and leaving him felt like I was going to see him again, but it was just, I can remember the conversation that I was having with him when I was leaving. So it wasn't this parental connection that I had with him, because I was waiting to see him again. I was waiting to pick up where we left off. And that is what stuck with me the most.
So the relationship was sort of suspended?
Yes.
And elaborate a little bit about that institutional feeling. If you can think back to being a kid, what it was like to go through the doors, talk me through that experience a little bit.
Going through the doors, you're going through another world, because there's people, you're being eyeballed, you're being monitored, you're being watched, and you don't feel safe, and you don't feel that you're going to see your father or your mother. You're going to see an inmate. And so I had to grow up fast, and I had to just accept the fact that that's where he was going to be for a while.
Mm-hmm. Now, Susie, I know you talked a little bit about having private conversations in a public place. Will you talk a little bit about that? And then Quinitra, repeat that.
I think when you're visiting a parent in prison, you have to kind of let down a lot of your insecurities, because I've had to have some very serious discussions with my mom in a very crowded visiting room across the table. It's been easier now. I can pretty much, if I'm going to cry, I'll just cry. I know that there's a bunch of other people that are going to look over. There's the prison guards, there's a video camera, there's a lot of other inmates. It's hard to get to that stage, and I'm sure a lot of not so much younger children, because they usually are, okay with that, but young teenagers, 13, 14 years old, I'm sure have an incredibly hard time trying to actually express their feelings in a public place like that, because they don't want to seem insecure. They don't want to feel like they're, letting anybody down. And so I know that's difficult. If there was a more private setting, that would be wonderful, especially for hard talks. And so.
I would have to say for my situation, it's a little different, because my mom was an aggressive woman, and my visitation rights with my mom was sort of different with me communicating with her. I was communicating with her most of the time behind the glass over the phone. So really, there was no type of, I guess you could say, any type of social communication going on with me and her because the conversations over the phone were recorded, and she really couldn't say anything to me because they were, listening to her conversations while she was talking to us. So I would really say there was really no type of communication with us because my situation was really different in most cases.
Impacted your relationship with your mother?
I think it impacted me really for the worse because we really couldn't have a mother-daughter relationship because there was things I felt like she was hiding from me, or things I couldn't tell her because their conversations were being recorded.
Absolutely. Now, I know getting to an institution to visit your loved one is not always easy. Does anybody have anything to say about, actually getting to the facility, who would take you, how that worked out?
I was lucky when I was younger. My mom was first incarcerated when I was 12, to have a very supportive father, and he brought my sister and I up at least one Sunday a month, and would go in and sit with us and let us have our time, and he would sit with us because we couldn't be in there alone, but sort of sit apart and just be absent during that time. And I know a lot of children are in tough situations where they can't get up there all the time, but I think that's very important. Now, like I bring myself up, and I usually try and bring my daughter up once a month because I think to keep that bond and connection is really important, especially my daughter only knows my mom behind bars. She was born when my mother was incarcerated, so.
I would say when I was 4, my only transportation was DCF because I was a foster child, and I really didn't have a chance to go up periodically to see my mom. I would say I would go up like once every 3 months or once every 6 months because it seemed like no case managers were available on the weekends for us to go see our mom. So I really didn't see her, and currently I don't go see her because I'm over the age of 18, and DCF is still my legal guardian, but I'm over the age of 18, which means I have to provide my own transportation. So I really don't get a chance to go see her now, and I really try not to bring my daughter because I don't like her to see that type of setting, even though she knows my mom is in a bad girls' school. I really don't try to encourage her to go see my mom.
So you were dependent on DCF to be able to get up there to visit?
Yeah.
Frankie, do you have?
My situation was different as well. My father was, just in and out of jail periodically all my life, and he never served any long sentences, so I never got to visit him. But being incarcerated myself and hearing that audio, and these people up here, talking about their experiences and things that they've gone through, is very moving and touching. Because now I know what my daughter is going through. I mean, I've heard it, and I've witnessed it from, the other side of the glass, so to speak. But yeah, it's very moving, and yeah. But my situation was, just different because he was in and out, and it was, he just get bonded out as soon as he get in, and just on and off, But that was my situation.
So talk a little bit about that having him go in and out, because when someone does a long bid, there is the opportunity when it is facilitated to visit. But when someone's constantly coming in and out, talk a little bit about, was he gone for long absences? What did that do? Did you know that he was in jail all the time, or was he just gone?
Well, it was kind of like, what it felt like was just like, it kind of just felt like, just an unexpected blow. Just when you least expected it, you could just be playing outside, a nice summer day and just enjoying yourself, then all of a sudden you hear like, oh, your father, he's back in jail again. So it was kind of like just an unexpected blow where you didn't have a chance to, prepare and, tense up for it and, prepare for it really. So, yeah, even if it was just like a week or two, they add up. I'm 23 now, and as I said, I'm still working on my relationship with my father, so.
Thank you. Now, I know there was also some exposure to the police. Now, I'm not sure who on the panel has witnessed arrest or, had some interaction with the police, but if there is that experience, if somebody would mind talking about having that experience, seeing an arrest, that sort of thing.
Not First experience was when my mother was 4 years old and we were actually going into foster care. They took us to the substation. I was 4 and my other siblings were younger than me, and it was just very confusing because being 4 years old, I didn't know what a substation was, and it was basically a lockup location, and it was just very scary to me. And currently, when my mother got incarcerated last year, the police had called my phone and asked me where I was because my mother was getting incarcerated for a domestic dispute, and for me to come get her belongings. And to me, it wasn't scary, but it was scary at the same time because why are the police depending on me to take care of a grown person or to assist a grown person in getting her belongings or something like that? So, I mean, to me, it was on and off scary situations with the police that I feel I shouldn't have gotten involved in.
Any other experiences with police or arrests?
I witnessed my father being arrested 3 times in my life, and it was traumatic. I would say that I felt when he was being taken away that no matter what he did, it wasn't good enough for him to be arrested, and that was just me being his son, And I don't think any kid is prepared to watch a parent being taken out of the home. But having my mother there was, I would say, helpful, and being able to understand wasn't easy to cope with, but I got through it, and it just became like a blur to me, just watching him getting taken away. Oh, they're taking Dad away for this now, but he'll be home later. It became almost acceptable.
So it became a normal thing that happened?
Yeah, it became a regular thing.
You bring up an important point when you say, when I saw them take away my father, I thought there's nothing that he could do that could be so bad that they should take him away from me.
Right.
And I think that was also echoed in the audio with, I want people to know just because my dad's in jail or because my mom's in jail, they're not a bad person. So I'm wondering if the panelists could talk a little bit about that dichotomy between, I know that he's a good person and he's a good dad, and this is what society views him. And then also just about the stigma around that, if you did feel any stigma, any judgment from the community or other family members.
I didn't pay attention much to the stigmas that existed around me, although they were there. His father's in jail. Will his kids grow up to be like him? And interesting statistic, 7 out of 10 children with an incarcerated parent are likely to become incarcerated themselves. And that to me is something I never thought would be real, but it is. And people do realize that circumstances and situations where people do make mistakes, but their kids aren't a direct result of what's going on. They're not going to be exactly what their father or their mother is like, being incarcerated. I just think that is really what needs to be addressed. Stigmas are real. They do exist. Yes, they do.
Now, did you find yourself trying to actively work against that expectation? The whole father-like son thing?
My mother kept me away from my father. Basically, she grew into that mold of I don't want my kids around their dad, after being I would say ridiculed of standing by him and trying to, I guess, stand up for him or just be there to just support him while he was going through that time. And it was hard for her. I understand now that I'm grown what it was for her and the burden she took on, but yeah, it was pretty much there, I guess. And I don't blame her for keeping us away, and it was protection. Any mother would do that if they felt that was needed. She felt that was needed, so I love her, I respect her, nonetheless.
Any other thoughts on stigma?
Yeah, my mother kept me away from my father most of my life, and I never went into a prison as a young man. She wouldn't allow it, and I think like Chauncey, your mom is sort of like your shepherd or whichever responsible adult is in your life. And my mother has been keeping me away from bad things for much of my life. She didn't like any of my girlfriends, none of them. None of them. But she loves my wife, but she couldn't stand any of them. She said, nope, not for you. She didn't like any of my friends because she said they're no good. And she definitely kept me away from my father, and she told me, I used to always hear, don't be like your father. And I said, be nice to know him so I would know not what to be like. And then out of curiosity, when I was old enough, I wanted to get to know him, and then prison separated us again. And what I found was, and my mother has really kind of helped me get through this, is that she didn't just keep me away from him. She kept me away from his brothers and sisters, his parents, my grandparents, my cousins. You know, and I work in the judicial branch, and I was surprised to learn that I have a first cousin who works in the same agency, and I knew him but did not know he was my cousin. That's how limited my contact was with that side of the family. So in terms of the stigma, it was always the teasing, you know, and I mentioned this on the radio show that my father was deceased, according to my mother, because when the paperwork came home asking about my father, whether it was for free lunch, permission slip, library card, that section that said father, she always wrote deceased. And so one day I decided I was going to fill in my father's name because I was old enough to understand who he was and what his name was, and she wouldn't sign it. And I realized that she was hurt by that relationship as well. And we have a great relationship, my mother and I. My father and I, it's a work in progress, but the stigma is still there. Contact with jail, 20 years ago, I bonded my father out. He still owes me $500. You know? And I remember getting the call and thinking, why is he calling me? All those years when I was growing up, I couldn't call on him. But it was the right thing to do. You know, it was the right thing to do. And I bonded him out, and I knew I wasn't going to get my money back. But, you know, I was okay with that. And he struggles, we struggle in terms of having a relationship, but he's a grandfather. And my kids need to know who their grandfather is. And they need to know their family history, and he gets to tell it. And my aunts are beautiful people. My cousins are beautiful people. These are people I did not know growing up. And we all lived in the same city. You know, and for a while I resented my mother for keeping me away from them. And that's a horrible way to feel, but I am a part of whatever my father is, so. And as a child, I wish there were other ways to keep us connected, you know. I wish my father wasn't a jailbird, as I always heard growing up. I wish he wasn't a killer. I wish I didn't hear comments like, if you don't kill anybody in your life, you will have done more than your father and your grandfather and your great-grandfather. I wish I didn't read in the newspaper that my grandfather was a murderer. My family name, my father's last name was one that you looked in the Hartford Courant and it was ridiculed. But interestingly enough, in my father's circle of friends, he's a big man. You know, I run into people all the time who look up to my father in the street world. Well, I don't look up to him for that reason. And it makes me realize the people he surrounded himself with, you know, for most of his life. And I think children inspire parents. And so I'm fortunate in that my father inspired me in a different way to maybe want to do more. But I know my children inspire me to be better. And I think had my father knew me when I was younger, I might have inspired him.
Okay, well, that's hard to follow. But as far as the statistic that Chauncey said, how 7 out of 10 10 kids who have parents in prison usually end up incarcerated themselves. And I've said this before, I hate that statistic because I know myself and I know my sisters were not going to end up incarcerated, and we're going to take steps to do that. And I think it's very important for there to be programs in place that when again, I can only speak for having a mother in prison, but if a mother goes in to York and there needs to be someone there who says, okay, this woman has 3 kids under the age of 15. Let's try and get them some help, reach out a hand, get them like a mentor or, families in crisis to get involved and see if there's some type of services that their family doesn't know about that can help them. And as far as like the feeling I have towards my mother is I know now, I'm old enough to know that she has done something wrong and there are consequences for that. But she's my mother, and no matter what she does, she's always going to be my mother, and there's a love there that's never going to go away. I've been hurt by her a lot, but we're working towards that. We're working on making that better. And I think what Trevor was saying about being separated from his father's family is another thing, because that's something that maybe could have helped him, cope with certain things. I think that if I didn't have my sister growing up, I wouldn't be who I was, because my sister was the only person in the world who was going through the exact same thing that I was at that moment. So she was the only person that I would talk to about it. I told my friends that my mom had moved away to another state. I wouldn't talk to teachers about it or guidance counselors, even really my family, because I was scared of what they might say or what they would think of me. I felt a lot of guilt because of what my mother did, and because it was money related, and a lot of the money that she took was used to buy things for me and my sisters. And so I felt if I hadn't wanted that, or if I hadn't got so much joy out of the material things that she would give us or the places that she would bring us, maybe she wouldn't have done that. And so I think that keeping family together like that and getting programs would help other kids in that situation. Thank you.
And I think that segues beautifully, into another topic, which is, what are some of the effects that having a parent who was incarcerated, what are some of the effects that has had on your life choices, either, working against that legacy or being influenced in a way that might have led to some negative choices, the effects on your identity, as a young man or a young woman?
I would say the effect of my mom being incarcerated is, I believe, positive for me, because I am going an opposite direction of actually trying to find resources instead of incarcerating, mothers for a domestic dispute. I'm trying to work towards being a probation officer, so my mom could be on probation, or someone in her situation could be on probation instead of incarceration, because really her situation, she would only get in domestic disputes when she was on drugs or when she was drunk. And I think it impacted me for the good, because I've never been incarcerated before nor arrested, because I feel no need for that road, and to go an opposite way. So I think her impact on me is to go the opposite way, not to go her way.
Anyone else impact on identity?
Coming up, seeing my father, going to jail, being introduced to that life and everything that came with it, I really became, numb, like I wasn't afraid of it anymore. It was just a norm. It actually, as far as identity is concerned, I definitely never been arrested for the crimes that my father's been arrested for. I worked hard for that, try not to make the same mistakes he made, but, ultimately, I did make mistakes, my own mistakes. But my father, he's learned a lot from his situation, by being incarcerated, and the lessons he's learned from falling. He learned the hard way. He didn't have a father coming up and things of that nature, so he didn't have any guidance. So he did the best he could. He learned the hard way. He learned from experience, and so by me not having a father, I learned the same way. Now that we've had experience, now that I've had experience, similar to his, being incarcerated and everything, now it's helped a lot because now we can teach. We've been in that. I've been in the cell. I've done bids. You know what I mean? Since I was 16, 17. I'm 23 now. I only been home. I only been free for about a year now, and I have the lessons I've learned. I have that. So that's something no one can take away from you. And so now I can share that. I can relate to others that's going through it, such as my brothers. My father is a father now today. He's a father. He's working hard, and I'm glad he found Christianity and things like that. I don't mean to ramble on or anything like that, but that's definitely what helped him as far as he found religion and programs that the state has to offer and things of that nature. But yeah, I'm thankful for everything we've gone through. We've come a long way, and we got a long way to go.
Yeah. And I think that's also, a really important segue. Now, we're here today for a conference, and the whole afternoon is based on action. So I think it's really important to take advantage of the opportunity we have right now with, 5 people who have experienced it to talk about what resources did you tap into? What was helpful, whether it's, natural kinship resources, family, whether it's something at school, whether it's something, some sort of program. To start on the positive, I definitely want to get into what didn't work and what could change. But starting on the positive, what did you find helpful throughout this situation? If anything.
I think when I was younger, like I said, it was more family and not so much. My father was supportive, but he wasn't exactly sure what to do with my sister and I as far as like therapy. I remember going to counseling, and that was just terrible because I was not sitting in a room with a woman who had no idea what I was going through, telling her how I felt. For me, it was being with my sisters and even my mother's mother, my grandmother, when she was around. Having someone that, knows my mom was very helpful. And my mom's second incarceration when I was 18, I think has actually been harder because it was during a point in my life where I was graduating high school and I got married and I had, a baby, and she wasn't there for any of that. And what's helped now is actually I've been working with Judy Dworin, who does a residency at York, and I got involved with working with her on the outside, and I was able to write pieces that helped express my feelings towards my mother in a way that I couldn't just do by sitting in a visiting room and telling her how upset I was with her, how she disappointed me, but this helped. And last spring, we were working with children whose mothers were in prison, and that has been amazing for me to see them have the opportunity to be able to speak to their parents by not speaking, by dancing or drawing or singing. And I think that there's different avenues that we have to look down, and art is definitely important in that, because a lot of people can't just talk, don't like sitting in rooms with therapists and going over details and, crying in front of them because they don't feel safe and they don't feel comfortable.
Thank you. Anybody else? What worked? What did help? What carried you through some of the hard times?
I say it was education, God, the realism, and being educated on my circumstances and everything my father has gone through and how it affected him and how that transferred over to me and how it affected me, I got an understanding. So as opposed to being angry and, you know, I became more understanding of what's going on, and I was able to, you know, I'm able to do something about it.
I think that's really important. So are you saying that, you know, once you got a better understanding of where your dad was, what the situation was, like once you learned, you know, what all that meant, that helped to have a
Yeah.
clear understanding?
Exactly. That's what I meant.
No. Anyone else, what helped?
Kind of like no one thing, Megan, but, you know, trusting adults, I think I heard Susie say it. If there are adults in your life, whether they be at school or wherever, if you can develop a trusting relationship with them where you feel comfortable talking about this, because you can repress it, you can create your own script, deal with it however you choose, but the pain is still there, and it is someone that you want to get to know and that you love. I think that's critical. You know, quite often when the question comes up, even today, when someone says, "Oh, what does your father do?" For me, it's like, you've just blown my past out of the water. I am no longer worthy. You know, I'm not blue blood. My father wasn't a CEO or a tycoon. My father was, by DOC's account, a career offender who was convicted for assaults and homicide. And that's not something you say at a cocktail party that makes you the talk of the night. But it is important to develop trusting relationships with people, with particularly young people, so that they can begin to explore their feelings about it and begin to share. And you can help them figure out the kinds of things that can help. I mean, a story, in 1991, I was working for Community Partners in Action in a brand new program. And it was maybe 20 years, close to 19 years ago, and a young man who in the program was the second client in this innovative program, we violated this young man. And I had connected with this kid because his life reminded me so much of mine. He lived in the same housing project. His mother was struggling with all these children. He was the bright kid, but for some reason he had taken the wrong path. And probation made a decision based on a series of violations that they were going to violate his probation. And they picked him up from the program 3 days before Christmas. And his last words to me as he got in the car were, "I can't spend Christmas with my daughter, Trevor." And, you know, it stuck with me because I had a baby girl at the time. And so on Christmas Day, not knowing what to do, or just having all these feelings about this, going back to this project, I went to his house. I didn't know if his family would embrace me or choke me. And I gave his daughter Christmas presents. And my feelings are that his daughter is probably the same age as my daughter today. And I wonder about her life. I wonder if people entered her life and helped to make a difference. But I do know that after this guy got out of jail and I came across him, you don't know when you run into an offender that you had a hand in kind of putting them behind bars if they're going to hug you or mug you, you know. And he hugged me because his mother told him what had happened. And I think sometimes just opening your heart to people and just kind of trying to understand their story and doing a little bit more, collecting more data up front, querying the children, you know. I think the last thing I'll say is that someone that I admire tremendously has a plaque in their office that says, "It is easier to build children than it is to repair men." And I so admire the plaque and the person, but I think it presupposes that we're talking about one individual. That if we invest in people up front, in building them and directing them, it's far easier than later on down the road having to redirect them. But when that child you're trying to build is the child of a broken person through incarceration, the task is that much greater. But as a professional, there's nothing less that you should be willing to take on.
Thank you.
I would have to piggyback off of Trevor and say trusting adults was very important for me. Even though I was young, DCF tried their hardest to have me and my mother still have a a relationship together, and I think if it wasn't for DCF, we wouldn't have a relationship. So I really like to thank DCF and all the supporting staff around me for encouraging me to still have a relationship with my mother, even though, she did what she did. Regardless of what she did, she's still my mother. So I would like to thank DCF and all the social workers and everyone out there supporting us.
So, because this is action-based, let's look at some of the things that either didn't work or, thinking back to your child selves, what would have helped? What wasn't there that could have helped, or what could have been different that would have made, an inherently awful situation a little bit easier to manage?
I think what would have helped for me is for jails to have a more child-friendly place for parents to visit at, instead of me being young and visiting my mom behind a glass, a glass door or a glass wall. And I believe when they assign us therapists, I believe a therapist or someone of resources should have the experience we had, because it's hard talking to someone that doesn't have the experience you had. And when you talk to a therapist and you don't really want to talk to them because you don't want to share your experience, they're quick to put you on, medication and stuff like that. So I think really talking to someone that you have gone, that they have gone through what you're going through really helps a lot, because they understand what you're going through and not want to put you on medications because you're sad, because you don't want to talk to them about your situation.
And could you just talk a little bit about, it seems maybe obvious to people who work with kids or people who've experienced it that, it's important to talk to someone more than just over the phone and across the glass. But for some of those who haven't experienced it, what do you think that would do to your relationship? How do you think your relationship would change if it was more physical, if it was more interactional?
I think if it was more physical and interactional, me and my mom or, my siblings would have got to know each other better, play in a child-friendly area, because we are children. And just, I think that visiting, that talking behind the glass really tormented me, because I really, like Chauncey said, had to accept the fact and really grow up. And I really think being a child, I had to grow up very, quick due to those decisions. And I think it would really impact if they really had a child-friendly area for children to visit their parents in for more interaction. You don't have to, you can trust your parent and not really, lie or think they're being deceiving to you because they have to lie because they're behind a glass door or not say what they want to say to you.
Anybody else, what they would change, what can make it better? Susie?
Just quickly, we have probation officers in Stamford, Connecticut, who can conduct an assessment at a prison facility in Suffield, and they never leave the probation office. And that's the wonderful thing about technology. So we figured out ways to be more efficient in terms of how we do our business, but we haven't applied those same connections to families of incarcerated individuals. People who know me know I'm a techno idiot. I have a cell phone. I have two cell phones. One's a work phone. It rings all the time. And the other one is a personal phone that I don't even know the number of because I don't give it away. 3 people call me, my wife and my 2 kids. And when we take advantage of the technology to bring families closer, we don't always have to provide transportation to and from a place, but helping people remain connected. My daughter broke my heart in August when she decided to go to the University of Alabama as a freshman, and just thinking about her. But some days I go home and there's this thing on the computer called Skype, and it's really strange because I don't even believe it's possible that she's looking at me and I'm looking at her in real time. And we get bored sometimes looking at each other. But neither wants to disconnect. And it's just strange that we have that type of capability, yet we have not been as innovative when it comes to keeping families connected to their loved ones who are behind bars.
Absolutely.
I think as far as visitation goes, I would love to be able to see one visiting session or 2 visiting sessions a month that were just dedicated to women inmates with their children, or male inmates, for that matter, with their children. And like I had said before, it's hard to have, a close relationship in a crowded room when you're surrounded by other adults and other, at least if it was all children and their moms, there would be like almost a community there. And I think the same goes for helping with kids. I think what's important is getting kids together in a group where they all have the same thing in common. And even though that's the toughest thing to have in common, at least they're not feeling like they have to be ashamed or hide from that. So,
Absolutely.
Just to add my input, I think what would be cool is if, say you have an adult doing a jail sentence, some time, and he has kids. I know they stopped letting people get degrees in jail, but say if they had sort of like Glenn Walker has with the family crisis, something like a fatherhood, but where the adult would, educate himself in a program where it would allow him to convey and to, teach his children what he's learning. Just like, latest books, or even to teach his children how to read, programs like that. Like, they could come in, or even using technology, and, you know what I mean? I don't know, I think that'd be cool, though.
My mom was old school, so she felt that a family that prays together is a family that stays together. And so she didn't seek outside sources even though they were provided, she wasn't ready for that, to say, okay, I'm gonna let this bus go pick up my kids to go see their father. I'm gonna take them to see their father if it comes to that. And it was days where she had to skip work because she didn't want anybody else bringing her kids to see their father, even though she didn't want to bring them to a prison to see him. And so I really don't know what works for in that case. I really don't know what would be positive. So.
So if you were to seek, some sort of resources, where do you think you'd feel most comfortable? I know there's a lot of talk about, services in schools or in faith-based communities or in the institution. Do you have any thoughts on, like absolutely not somewhere, or, I could sort of warm up to that idea in terms of where to find services, or how to find out about services?
I think that the problem with me, most of all, was that I didn't want people to know that my father was incarcerated, so there's this whole anonymity thing. And schools are, I guess, the best place for educating children, and actually, I'm not sure how to introduce myself to another kid or another student who has a father or a mother that's incarcerated. So if there was a source that could bring children together in schools and actually teach them, or even just have them interact with each other, I think that would be a start.
the program that I was talking about earlier and that the DVD was playing before this had started, our next part of the program, we're going to be having, as far as I know, a group of students coming out of school during the day to work with them. And when I had first heard about that, I was a little like, oh, okay, you know, are they going to be comfortable with that? Because I know if I was being almost singled out and taken out of the classroom, and if kids ask questions, I would have been like, oh, I'm a little, you know, scared that they might find out and start picking on me. But I think the fact that we are doing it, and it's all trial and error. If this works, that'll be great, and if they're comfortable about that, maybe if they're all coming, you know, if there's a few from the same school, they can kind of, you know, build a friendship or build an alliance so that does not happen. But that is happening. We are taking kids from, a school, and so we'll see how that goes. I hope that it'll work out.
I think there's a responsibility that the school professionals have to be aware and sensitive to the issue. Schools are very good when there's a loss of providing grief counseling and things like that for children who have experienced loss. And incarceration is that same type of loss. So I think it's important that staff be aware, and so that they can connect with these kids in a way that it's okay. Because if you're saying there's 20,000 kids who have a parent incarcerated, it's 20,000 kids who are going to school who are struggling with something. And I was one of those kids who acted out at school. And thankfully, I had a teacher who knew my capacity. And she said he acts out because he's not challenged. And he wants to be recognized in a different way. So I had siblings who had trophies and their accolades. When company came over, it was, Daryl, show them how to do the new James Brown dance. And then when they got to me, it was like, go get your report card. So school was like, it was my religion. But at some point in time, it became difficult to continue to cope with that. And I think if more teachers were aware of this issue and how it impacts children, I think it would make a difference in terms of how they interact with some kids, and they don't further stigmatize the kids who are dealing with that.
And I think that's come up in speaking with all of our panelists. It's, not necessarily, not to single out, but just that it's on the table, that people know that it's happening, that people know that it affects kids in a very real way. Just to get it out there is really important. I think we're going to open up the panel to questions, unless anybody has some thoughts they want to get in before we turn everyone loose on you guys.
What we'd love to do at this juncture is to inquire as to whether or not there are any questions from the audience. Now, we have a microphone over here, and if she wave her hand, are you waving? Okay, wave your hand over there. There's a microphone over there. We'd love it if you had some questions from members of the panel for them to respond to. So while you're coming over here to where the young lady is standing, I thought that I might mention, Andrew asked if I would mention the fact that I've had, as many of you know, two kids, I call them, who've been confined. And Trevor and I was talking about it in the corner over there this morning. My third oldest kid had 117 months. In the federal system, they give it to you in months, and he was gone for 9 years. And we were kind of talking about that with Maureen over in the corner as to the impact. And I was just so pleased to hear the panel talk because I understood exactly what they were talking about, because I was a parent who didn't quite understand what was going on, that still goes on today, and he's out. And the difficulty I have is that here's a kid who's about 45 years old, and notice I'm calling him a kid, who's about 45 years old, and his maturity was arrested, meaning he didn't quite grow the same pace as peers were growing outside. So when it's time for him to come back and thinking he can mingle again, it doesn't exist. So he's kind of alone, and I don't know how to fill the void. I don't know how to assist him in making the adjustment. I don't know what I can do about his absence of maturity, as I describe it, because of what he's missed. But it's a work in progress, as Trevor calls it, trying to get to know and better understand what the impact has been. So it is something that is just the opposite. I'm not the father inside, I'm the father outside. that's having a difficulty. So is anybody with a question over here? We got somebody, just give your name and go right ahead.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Lanier, and I'm Chief Probation Officer in the Norwich office. And my question to the panel is, do you see yourselves as the exception to the rule? And I ask that because I work in a local high school mentoring children, and the sad reality is a lot of them embrace the fact that their parents are incarcerated. It's like a badge of honor. And I don't know if that's media driven by the videos and what's seen on TV and MTV, that they kind of glorify that lifestyle, but I find it that it's a little alarming that they all seem to think that this is a badge of honor. And I don't know if it's that they're trying to mask their pain, that they're really hurting, but on the outside they have to act tough and like this is something cool because everyone else thinks it's something cool. But I'm really torn as to what's going on with the kids. Do they see the tragedy of what they're living, or is it that they see that and mask it by trying to act like it's something cool?
Thank you. Go right ahead. Megan, who wants to try?
I could relate to that. You know, wearing it I understand what you're saying about as far as wearing, you know, your parent being incarcerated or someone you know being incarcerated as a badge of honor. Really, you know, that's the norm. That's the hood's chorus. That's the song they sing. That's the only song they got to sing. You know what I mean? That's the only song they have to sing, so they're going to sing that song with pride. It's lack of education. They don't know anything else. You know what I mean? So they're doing what they know how. It is a defense mechanism, and it's false pride.
Can you speak just a little bit? Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Did everybody hear me? Yeah. All right.
Sorry, I'm loud, but can you speak a little bit about what changed? Because at some point
Oh yeah, I forgot to.
you took a different turn. So
Oh yeah. I'm no exception to the rule. You know, I'm still struggling, you know, to understand what's going on. I'm still going through the struggles of, you know, poverty, ignorance. I still live in, you know, similar environments or whatever, but, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I took the time to address some, you know, being a father, you know, of someone who was incarcerated. I purposely took the time to educate myself while I was incarcerated, just about, you know, just as broad as I could, you know, just to study and read and talk to people and just to prepare myself for, you know, being released from prison, because I have a daughter, and so I just did the best I could with the time that I had, you know what I mean? Really, it's kind of, you have an advantage being incarcerated as a father, as a person in general, because you have a lot of time. You can utilize it wisely, so long as that you know what's important in your life. And so if you take that time to study, find your flaws, your weaknesses, and you know, make a good observation of yourself, you could become a better person. So I'm no exception to the rule, but I'm still working on myself. It's never ending.
Exception to the term that I am an exception, although, you know, I have a college degree, a graduate degree, pretty decent life, but I think it's sort of driven by your capacity, you know. I think that these folks up here have accomplished just as much getting through their struggle, and I think we can't look at what's the ideal level of success for someone who battles this, what the outcome looks like. It may be that they make small strides in the right direction. Does that mean that they're going to one day occupy a house on Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C.? Probably not. It's about your capacity and your willingness to kind of fight through some things. So when we start to say that you're the exception, we're sort of implying that some people just kind of get there, or they have this exceptional capacity, and that the rest of the folks can't. And I think it's all individualized. How do we humanize this experience so that that individual can connect with their loved one in a meaningful way and move forward. And I don't really know how that looks. You know, I don't know if I'm a success, if I'm an exception. I kind of say maybe it's been a hindrance in some respects. Maybe I'm drawn to this profession because of how it impacts me internally. But I think there's so many kids out there, when you look in Connecticut and you see the number of people that we incarcerate, and particularly the number of people of color, we don't have to go far to find the communities where children are suffering. And so the question is, what are we willing to do? How are we willing to impact their lives? And what goals do we have for them? The goals may simply be that they gain some understanding of their struggle and they move forward. That's what we're all doing. We're all surviving, you know, this human condition. So I'd like to think that that every situation can be a success. And that success is normal, because guess what? Incarceration has become normal. It's a normal facet of life, you know, and kids talk about having swagger and being, I mean, my son is a nerd, okay, by my own estimates, you know, but he wants the baggy pants and shoelaces a certain way, and it's kind of corny to me because he is no street kid, but he's drawn to it because that's what we popularize. But I know academically he's in a better place. I know socially he's in a better place. I know he's proud of me as a father, and I know he inspires me. But if he had to deal with that, you know, separation or loss, I mean, a lot of folks in this room are dealing with the same thing. They're dealing with separation and loss. So the exception, back to Tammy's statement about glorifying, yeah, we have some work to do. We're sending the wrong message to young people as to what's important. But sometimes we're not always good examples of what's important. You know, it doesn't look like the hat on backwards or what have you, but we're hyper-materialistic, self-indulgent, all these things, and we're expecting young people to somehow be different. I was riding home not too long ago, and riding down Albany Avenue in Hartford, headed to my home in West Hartford, and as I'm riding down Albany Avenue with my windows up, enjoying the sights of the neighborhoods like the one I grew up in, I saw an older gentleman, probably mid-60s, and he had on a jersey and some baggy jeans and some sneakers and his hat on backwards. And I had already done my assessment of the people. You know, I saw the lady out there who was up to no good. I saw the young guy who was flagging down cars. And then I said, look at OG. And as I got closer, I realized it was my father. And so the conditions won't change unless we're willing to change them, you know. And in terms of what we put out there and what we expect, it's not easy. And Tammy, folks like you and your community, the work that you do, it makes a difference.
Thank you. There's another question over here. Does anyone else care to respond, or go to the next question? Let's take the next question here.
I'm a psychologist at York, and first I want to just thank you for your amazing and insightful and intelligent thoughts. Thank you. I also admire, you know, Trevor, you said you did the right thing when it came to your dad, and the rest of you had different perspectives and thoughts about what was right for you. I admire that you had to figure out what's right for you. We are, as clinicians, we offer different kinds of groups and coping skills and things like that to the moms, to the ladies, most of whom are moms. And we want to be able to, and next time around when we offer a parenting group, we want to be able to offer something that you think would be, I'd love suggestions from you all as to what would be the important topics that we could present to the ladies.
I'm sure this probably already is one, but making sure that they're aware how important keeping that relationship with their children, because I know my mom's up for parole in March. This is her third time. We're not sure exactly what will happen, but I know when she does come home that she is almost relying on us to make sure we're, hey, Mom, you okay today? Or that she knows that she can come to us, and we're older, so younger children wouldn't really be able to do this, but that she could come to us if she starts feeling overwhelmed. And I think that's important for them to keep relationships with their children, because then they know that they have people out there that are looking up to them to do the right thing and show them that they made a mistake, they have dealt with those consequences, but now they've come back. And I think it's important to make sure that moms and fathers are, aware that they have people that are relying on them.
In work, I have the opportunity to speak with, my colleagues, and I have the opportunity to speak with a lot of children who have a parent who's incarcerated. And one thing that surprised me, although it really shouldn't, is, one of the biggest things, there are these strong emotions attached with the relationship, but there's also the issue of awkwardness, and the artificial setting of the visitation, but also, like, what do you talk about? I mean, what does any 16-year-old kind of talk about with their dad? That's a naturally, it can be a naturally awkward situation, especially when sitting across a table. And, just helping parents find ways to connect, to ask the questions, to remember, what the soccer game is or who your friends are. I think that would really help, because it's not just about the really dramatic emotions, also about making conversation and how to do that.
Does anyone else care to respond on the panel? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Duckworth Grange. I work for DCF in the Hartford office. We're sitting here, and there's a large number of state agencies here. And if we had the answers, I don't think we'll be having this conference, But I think the answers lies in the community, okay? And as panelists, what do you think the community can do, okay? Such as our churches, our community-based organizations, because in this day and time, the budget is in the forefront. And and I know that individuals who are incarcerated, folks don't like to spend money on that population. So I think we're going to have to be innovative, thinking outside the box. But I think the answer lies in each neighborhood, in each home, and in each community. What do you think the community can do to help circumvent this issue, and also help to create protective factors around the children, from the schools, from DCF, from DOC, from CSSD? What suggestions can you provide us?
How you doing, Duckworth? I think one of the things that we presuppose, or that we assume, is that there isn't already some things going on. And I think what we have to do is put the spotlight on those things that are happening, and by bringing more attention to them, hopefully we increase those tenfold. But I do agree with you that the answers come from the community. I think because prisons are full of so many people from certain communities, there has to be partnership and ownership. There cannot be this fear of bringing the community in to that institution. It's sort of like the one bastion of, kind of separation in terms of institutions that deal primarily with a set population. So if schools were not welcome, did not welcome the community, I would say something's wrong with that school system, okay? And so I think we have to view corrections in the same way. Its very name implies that the goal is to help to repair the harms caused to society as well as these individuals, so that the place to which they return is better served by that correctional system. And so we have the platforms, we have reentry, we have faith-based, the players are there. The resources are not as costly as one might assume. My father used to refer to himself as El Padrino Negro. He thought he was the black godfather. That was his street lingo. And when I got to know him, he tried to buy my love, and he showered me with material things. But it didn't fill the void in my heart. He wrote letters to me when he was incarcerated. Those letters I cherish. When I visited him and he gave me a belt that he made in the prison workshop, and my name was off-centered, it was the coolest gift he ever gave me, and I cherish it. So those little things of recognizing that grandmother who makes sure that her grandchildren see her daughter who's incarcerated, because that grandmother feels guilty about her own shortcomings in raising her daughter. Recognizing that grandmother, that it's okay, that you are doing the right thing, we respect what you're doing, and encouraging others to do it, talking to ministers, getting out and having a conversation with people like we're having today, and that's the action part, a conversation to empower people or encourage people to get involved. But I don't think that the answers are going to come just from policies that we implement in the agencies that we work for, but they're an important piece.
Thank you very much. I'll take one more question because we need to go to our principal speaker of the morning. So one last question, or if you want to give it up, go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Debbie Street. I'm with Bail Services. And I just have a question for the panel, and that is, if your parents were sitting here today, the ones that were incarcerated, would you say that they were still, or would feel like as though you were still angry with them, or you have some type of forgiveness for them? And if so, would you be able to tell them?
If my father was here today, I mean, he doesn't have to be here to know that I'm still angry at him. I told him last night. Nah. But then he also would know that, that I'm working on forgiving him too.
I've always forgiven her for what she did. I'm not angry at her, but I'm angry at the decisions that she made. And regardless of the decisions that she made, I still have to forgive her because she's my mother.
I've forgiven my mother for the absence that she's put in my sisters and my life. But it's hard, and now with the probability that she could be released in March, we've now been going over other scenarios. I had a very difficult talk with her last week about how I realized suddenly, I'm the oldest, so now my middle sister is now at that age where she's in a serious relationship, and a couple years down the road, they could possibly get married, and how it wasn't necessarily a jealous thing because I love my sister and I want her to be happy, but it was like, oh, you might get to be at that wedding, and you're more than likely going to be able to be there when my sister has her first child, and how that hurt that I felt that she wasn't there was kind of coming up again. And she said, there's nothing that we can really do. We can go back, we can watch, the video of my wedding, and she can spend as much time with me and my daughter, but that it hurt because we can't recapture that. And so I think that's a new chapter that we're gonna have to deal with when she comes home. But as far as her incarceration, I know that she has learned her lesson, if you will. She's gone to the necessary programs that she had to, and others that she hasn't, and she really is a different person. And she now, I see my mom that I had when I was 5 years old, when she was on the right path and just really committed to being a mom, which I lost for so many years.
My mom used to always say, never throw a stone and hide your hand, meaning that if you make a mistake, you own up to that mistake, and you forgive yourself, and you can only hope for forgiveness. So my father, being the man he was, he always was honest about the mistakes he made and him trying to correct them. So I've forgiven him a long time ago. I haven't forgotten, but it's easy to forgive, and it's hard to forget.
Thank you. We just give the panel a hand here.